الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وفقهنا إذا جهلنا وزدنا علما نافعا وعملا متقبلا يا كريم اللهم انفعنا بالقرآن العظيم وجعله لنا إماما ونورا وهدى ورحمة يا أرحم الراحمين وبعد. So on this first day of Ramadan, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن, the month in which the Quran was revealed, where not only have we begun our fast, but just as important, perhaps even more important, is that we begin or we try to strengthen our connection with the Quran. Because it's as-siyam wal Quran yashfa'an. Fasting and the Quran, they act together. They're not two separate entities. They act together and they speak on behalf of that person on the day of judgment in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As-siyam wal Quran yashfa'an li sahibihima yawm al-qiyamah. The fast as well as the Quran will speak on behalf of that person on the day of judgment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the fast will say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because in Yawm al-Qiyamah, on the Day of Judgment, intangible, abstract, al-ma'ani, those things that don't have a physical reality in this world begin, or they have a physical created reality by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that world. So you'll see something called fast. You'll see something tangible, physical called Quran. You'll see something tangible, physical called salah, called dhikr. All of these things that are actions that have no physical reality, in that world they have a physical reality. And so Yawm al-Qiyamah, as you stand in front of Allah, you'll see something stood next to you called siyam, called fast. And that's your fast. And you'll see something next to you called Quran, a physical entity called the Quran. And they'll both speak on behalf of you with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the siyam, the fast will say, Ay Rabb, O my Lord, I made this person go without food and drink throughout the day, so allow me to intercede on his behalf. Allow me to intercede on his behalf. And the Quran, your Quran will say, oh my Lord, I made him miss sleep at night, so allow me to speak on his behalf. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow both Quran and Siyam and Quran, both to speak on behalf of that person in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Shahr al-Sawm is Shahr al-Quran. The month of fasting is the month of Quran. And as we mentioned repeatedly, if you go back and look at ayat al-Siyam for the Quran, you only have 5 verses in the Quran that speak about fasting. Only have 5 from verse 181 to 186 in Surah Al-Baqarah. Only 5 verses in the Quran speak about fasting. But in the midst of those 5 verses, verse number 3 and number 4, verse number 3, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. Verse number 4, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. Verse number 3 begins by speaking about the month of Quran. This is Ramadan, is the month in which the Quran was revealed. And verse number 4 about dua. When my slave asks you about me, فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. Truly I am near. These, in the 5 verses in the Quran about fasting, one speaks about Quran, one speaks about dua. The two acts of worship that are inseparable from the fast itself. And to gauge a way of measuring the success with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and perhaps the most important thing, not even success, not even the most important thing in our worship is not whether it's valid or not. It's not is it correct or not. It's, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala happy with it or not? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala happy with your act of worship? إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only accepts acts of worship from those who are conscious and fearful of Him. So you may do the best act of worship. And anybody looking at it thinking, mashallah, his fast is brilliant, his Quran is brilliant, and so on. But that doesn't tell you the status of that act of worship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And your concern should always be, how is your act of worship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So if you want to gauge your fast with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look at your Quran in the month of fasting. Look at your Quran inside the month of fasting. If you want to gauge the success and the acceptability of your fast with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then look at your dua how much dua you make inside of this. Especially the dua that we read as a habit, Allahumma innaka afuun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna. The importance of that dua is that the Prophet, when he was asked by Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, what should I read if I happen to, إِذَا أَدْرَكْتُ لَيْلَةَ الْقَدْرِ, if I happen to catch Laylat al-Qadr, he told her to read this, Allahumma innaka afuun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna. Oh Allah, you are the pardoner, you love to pardon, so pardon me. So dua, Quran and dua is central to your fasting. It's central to your fasting for it to have acceptability with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then, more particularly about Quran, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. This is the month in which the Quran was revealed. The Quran has different stages. You have nuzul, you have tanzil, you have inzal, you have tanazzul of the Quran. Nuzul al-Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the Quran came down. And in one night, the whole al-inzal, that's nuzul, nazal al-Quran, nazal bihi al-ruh al-amin. That the Holy Spirit came down with the Quran, Jibreel alayhi salam. But you also have what's referred to as inzal al-Quran. Inna anzalnahu fi laylat al-qadr. Inna anzalnahu fi laylat al-mubarakah. The descent of the Quran, or the cause of the descent of the Quran, which is a reference to the whole of the Quran being revealed in one night, down to Bayt al-Izzah, the lowest of heaven. In one night, the whole of the Quran comes down to the lowest of heavens. And that happens, we know when it happens. It happened on Laylat al-Qadr. We know it happened on a Monday. We know it happened on a Monday. Inzal al-Quran took place on a Monday. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was asked about why he fasted on the Monday, he said, because I was born on the Monday and the Quran was revealed on a Monday. And many people don't look at the second part. They'll go on all about the Prophet was born on the Monday, so we celebrate the birth by fasting. But he sallallahu alaihi wasallam also said, وَفِيهِ أُنزِلَ al-Quran. And on the Monday the Quran was revealed. And we celebrate the beginning of revelation of Quran by fasting on a Monday. Just as we celebrate the beginning of revelation, which is the Prophet's mission, by fasting on a Monday. And note, the two side by side. Right? Revelation comes in Quran and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet's mission is the carrier of the Quran. And both of them come into this world on a Monday. Both of them come into this world on a Monday. So we know when the Quran was revealed. It came down to Bayt al-Izzah, the lowest heaven, on a Monday, and then it was revealed on that same night, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق, which according to most or many, they said it was on the 17th of Ramadan. On the 17th of Ramadan. So you have Inzal al-Quran, and then you have Tanzil al-Quran. Tanzil al-Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He reveals it over a space of 23 years, beginning with Iqra and ending with وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ. Over a space of 23 years, in the life of the Messenger, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals the Quran generally 5 verses at a time. 5 verses at a time over 23 years. And that came to an end just over a week before the Prophet ﷺ passed away. The final verse was revealed. But then, there's something further that does not stop with the Quran. Tanazzulat al-Quran. Tanazzulat ma'an al-Quran. Allah will keep on revealing the meanings of the Quran to the heart of the one who exposes himself to the Quran. And that's Tanazzulat al-Quran. Tanazzulat al-Quran, for the one who interacts and engages with the Quran, Allah will continue to reveal meanings of the Quran and understandings of the Quran that did not precede him, that did not come before, that perhaps none of the great Mufassirin, none of the great scholars of the Quran ever spoke about. But Allah will keep on revealing meanings of the Quran, which is why you keep on reading the Quran. Keep on reading the Quran, so Allah put something into your heart about the secrets of the Quran. And as the Prophet ﷺ himself described the Quran, he described it as Bahrun la tanqadi ajaibu. Bahrun la tanqadi ajaibu. He described it as a sea or an ocean whose wonders will never come to an end. Whose wonders never come to an end. Bahrun la tanqadi ajaibu. And that's why Imam al-Ghazali and others, they mention that if you understand the Quran as being this ocean, and then you look at the tafsir of Ibn Abbas, and you look at the tafsir of many of these great mufassir, the great scholars of the Quran, you see them as just being, with the greatness of what they spoke about. It's not limitless. It's limited. They spoke and commented upon verses of the Quran. They gave us great understandings of it. But Imam al-Ghazali said it's far, far more beyond what they spoke about. There's far, far more beyond what they spoke about. So the tanazzulat of the Quran is our exposure to the Quran. Our exposure to the Quran is ultimately so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place in our hearts some understandings and some meanings of the Quran. But in order to do that, as some of our teachers, they mentioned that we're in a zaman, we're in a time where there's barriers between the Muslims and the Quran. There's hujub between the Muslims, hujub al-ma'asi, hujub al-ghafla, hujub al-bu'd. There are barriers and there's veils that distance the believers from the Quran. Veils of sin, veils of neglect meaning open the Quran in Ramadan. That's neglect. Neglect of the Quran is somebody opens the Quran in Ramadan and doesn't open it or hardly opens the rest of the year. That's takhad al-Quran mahjura. People who abandon, neglected the Quran. And distance from the Quran. All of these, there's veils now between the average Muslim and the Quran. Those veils, they need to be broken. Those walls, they need to be broken, because especially in the end times of humanity, the greatest protection that people will have from the tribulations of the last days is the Quran. And the fear, what you see now unraveling in front of us, is as we're seeing the end times unfold, we're seeing Muslims becoming more and more distant from the very thing that will protect them from the tribulations this time. The very thing that will protect the believers. The Prophet told Sayyidina Ali, when he asked, Mal makhraju yawma idhin ya Rasulullah, what will be the salvation in those times, O Messenger of God? He said, one thing, Kitabullah. He said, one thing, the Book of Allah. So those veils of distance from the believer in the Quran have to be broken, they have to be smashed, they have to be taken down. And to begin that process, it begins just by becoming people who become habitual in reading the Quran. That's the first thing. وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. The very first thing is there has to be an attachment to reciting the Quran. وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. The verse which instructs the Prophet to do tartil of the Quran. Tartil, to recite the Quran in a proper manner. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu ardah, when he commented upon this and he said, Tartil huwa tajweed al-huruf wa ma'rifat al-wuquf. So that you recite the words correctly and you know where the right places are to stop. Tartil huwa tajweed al-huruf wa ma'rifat al-wuquf. It's to recite the letters properly and to know where to stop, to know the correct places to stop. That verse that instructed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to recite the Quran in a correct manner was one of the very first verses revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Surah Al-Muzammil, which according to some is the third surah revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Surah Al-Muzammil, the very beginning of revelation, you have the order, recite the Quran as it should be recited. وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, throughout his life, he lived that. If you want to see a day of the Prophet, it's a day that's connected to the Quran. He begins the day with the Quran. Throughout the day, he's with the Quran. His night times are all about the Quran. The Prophet's Quran yamshi. He is Quran. Everything about him is Quran. So from the very beginning of revelation, the Prophet reciting the Quran and his teaching and instilling within his companions the love and the attachment to the Quran. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, radiallahu anhu Allah, one of the greatest companions. And the greatness of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, radiallahu anhu, is that the vast majority of the ummah worship and recite Quran based upon his transmission from the Prophet. The worship, the madhab of Abu Hanifa, which is the dominant madhab historically as well as now. Instead of pure numbers, it's the dominant madhab, is the legacy of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. It's the legacy of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. And the Quran that we recite, Hafs and Asim, the transmission that comes from Hafs from Asim, is the legacy of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. The vast majority of the Ummah recite the Quran as transmitted from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. The vast majority of the Ummah worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala based on the transmission of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. And at the very beginning of the days of the Messenger in Mecca, when he's declared his message, the Prophet on one occasion, he's on the outskirts of Mecca with Abu Bakr, and he sees Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, who at that point has not become Muslim. He's not become Muslim. He's a shepherd. He works as a shepherd. So he's looking after some livestock, some animals. And the Prophet ﷺ comes to him and asks him if he can have some drink of milk from some of the sheep that he has with them. But he's Amin, Ibn Mas'ud, not just Ibn Mas'ud, he's trustworthy. Now, he doesn't have permission to do that because he's a shepherd, he's employed by somebody. So he will not give him milk. He will not give the Prophet ﷺ milk. He's not a Muslim at this point. He's not going to give the Prophet ﷺ any milk. But then the Prophet ﷺ sees a weak, a really skinny sheep where the others, he can see there's nothing in the others. There's no milk whatsoever being produced. So he tells him, give me that, because no milk's come from that. And he gives him that sheep that has no milk. The Prophet ﷺ then touches the others and recites some verses and recites some words over it, and then milk starts to flow. Then milk starts to flow. And the Prophet ﷺ drinks from that. When Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he sees that from the Prophet ﷺ, he says, I want you to teach me what you just recited. And he's not a Muslim at this point. He said, I want you to teach me what you've recited. And the Prophet ﷺ says to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, just a couple of words, 3 words, but that changes the destiny of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. He said, Innaka ghulamun mu'allam. He said, Innaka ghulamun mu'allam. You are a young man who will be taught. You are a young man who will be taught. And Ibn Mas'ud says, on the blessing of that statement from the Prophet, he said, I took more than 70 surahs directly from the mouth of the Prophet. So I took more than 70 surahs directly from the mouth of the Prophet. So there you have not just the Prophet, even those around the Prophet. All their concern is Quran. All of their concern is the Quran. Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan, who's considered the greatest companion in terms of Quran. And in the biographies of the Imams of Quran, number 1, Uthman ibn Affan. Number 1, Uthman ibn Affan, radiyallahu anhu arda. He's the one who transmits from the Prophet, the authentic narration. خَيْرُكُم مَّن تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَ. The best of you is the one who learns the Quran and teaches it. The best of you is the one who learns the Quran and teaches it. And Uthman ibn Affan, with all the greatness, he has many qualities of greatness. Like for example, he is the Nurayn, the only human being to have married 2 daughters of the Prophet. The only human being to have married 2 daughters of the Prophet. He's the one, the Prophet said, even the angels have shyness in front of Uthman. Even the angels have shyness in front of Uthman. Shadid al-Haya. Shadid al-Haya. Somebody had a lot of modesty and a lot of shyness with him. He has many great qualities, Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan. But the overriding quality, Sayyidina Uthman, Jami' al-Quran. Jami' al-Quran. He's the one who gathered and compiles the Quran. He's the one who preserves the Quran for the later generations. But he himself lives the statements. Because one thing about the companions, the original transmitters, like we heard a hadith and we're like, mashallah, it's a wonderful statement, and then we just carry on as we are. Nothing happens, nothing changes. We hear words of the messenger, but it doesn't leave a lasting impact on our hearts. It impresses us. We're like, subhanallah, mashallah, but it doesn't leave a lasting impression in our hearts. And the real effect of words is not how it affects your mind, it's how it affects your soul. It's not your mind, it's how it affects your soul. And they were a people that when they heard words from the messenger directly, it changed something within them. It changed and affected something within them. So when he hears the statement, خَيْرُكُم مَّن تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَ, the best of you is the one who learns the Quran and teaches it. It changes something within him. He lives this, and he becomes the best of them because of the Quran. He becomes the best of them because of the Quran. So Sayyidina Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu arda, he's the one, for example, and this is one of the greatest manaqib, one of the greatest virtues of Sayyidina Uthman, that is related from about him, that as an 80-year-old man, he stood at Maqam Ibrahim, 80 years old, he stood at Maqam Ibrahim, and he stands and prays 2 nafil and does a khatim of Quran in 1 rak'ah. He finishes the whole of the Quran in 1 rak'ah, 80 years old. 80 years old, Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan, he finishes the whole of the Quran, and he's the original Shaheed al-Mus'haf. He's the original Shaheed al-Mus'haf, the martyr of the Quran. Like the great teacher of these times, Shaykh Sa'id Ramadan al-Bhuti rahimahullah ta'ala, he's been given the title Shaheed al-Mus'haf. the martyr of the Quran. Because as he's martyred and as he's killed, he's teaching Quran. He's teaching tafsir in Quran. He's teaching Quran and he's killed teaching Quran. But the very first Shaheed al-Mus'haf is Sayyidina Uthman. The very first martyr of the Quran. Sayyidina Uthman, and Shaykh Sa'id Ramadan al-Bouti rahimahullah ta'ala, is part of a silsila that began with Sayyidina Uthman. And someone who's martyred teaching the Quran. Sayyidina Uthman is killed reciting the Quran. He's killed reciting the Quran, and the original copy of Mus'haf al-Imam that he was reciting, it has the stains of his blood over the very verse, which is significant. The verse that he's killed at is very significant. فَسَيَكْفِيكَهُمُ اللَّهُ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of them, and He hears everything and He knows everything. So Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu warda is somebody who lived that statement. خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. The best of you is the one who teaches, learns the Quran and teaches it. Al-khayriyya fi hadhihi al-ummah. Greatness in this ummah is to do with the Quran. Greatness in this ummah is to do with the Quran. Likewise, the wife of Sayyidina Uthman, when he's about to be killed, the Khawarij who came in, who entered into his, or who barged into his house, which was being guarded by Sayyidina Hassan, Sayyidina Hussein, Sayyidina Ali, Sayyidina Hassan, Sayyidina Hussein at the door, protecting the house of Sayyidina Uthman. They managed to get through. And as they go past his wife, she said to them, even if you kill him, he's a man who would finish the whole Quran in one night. He's a man who would finish the whole Quran within one night. She's telling them he has nothing to fear with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A man who lived, the meaning is خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. The best of you is the one who learns the Quran and teaches it. And one of the students of Sayyidina Uthman, his name is Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami. Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami. He's also one of the teachers of Asim. He was a teacher of Hafs, which is a transmission of the Quran that we have. Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami, one of the greatest of the Imams of Quran from the Tabi'een, student of Sayyidina Uthman, who reads the Quran in Sayyidina Uthman. He said, when I heard from Uthman, radiallahu anhu, the statement to the Prophet, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ, the best of you is the one who learns the Quran and teaches it. He said, أَقَعَدَنِي 40 سَنَةً. He said, that statement made me sit in the masjids of Kufa 40 years teaching the Quran. 40 years teaching the Quran because he heard these words of the Prophet. And there you have a second example. Sayyidina Uthman, a man who when he heard the words of the Prophet, it changed something within his soul. It changed something. The same with his students, Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami. He hears the words of the Prophet directly from the one who heard it direct from the Prophet. That changes something within him. That's not kalam fadhi. That's not just empty words. That's not empty words for him. He hears something from the Prophet. He changes his life based on that statement. So now he's sat in the masjid of Kufa, 40 years teaching the Quran. Had it not been for people like that, vessels of the Quran like that, the transmission would have died at the beginning. But because of him, now Asim takes the Quran. Because of him, Hafs now takes the Quran, and then it's spread throughout this ummah. So they live the meanings of خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. The Prophet ﷺ was a constant reciter of the Quran. And just to mention about the recitation of the Prophet of the Quran, or not the recitation of the Prophet, but the recitation of the Sahaba around the Prophet. Because when we study this hadith with our teacher Shaykh Samir al-Nas, he said, this is the Sahaba, not the Prophet. This is the Sahaba, not the Prophet. The standard of the Prophet is beyond what we can imagine. And when you have a Sahabiyya coming, and the Prophet hears that she's spending the whole night standing and praying with the Quran, the Prophet forbids her from doing it. He tells her not to do it. He said, because you're not like me. He said, you're not like me. So he said, do what you're able to do, those actions that you're able to do, because Allah will only continue to reward you as long as you continue to worship Him. But you're not like me. The Prophet would stand and recite Quran to the point where Sahaba, the greats, Ibn Mas'ud and the likes, Sayyidina Hudayfa, they found it that they couldn't cope with it anymore. Like they were stood next to the Prophet in prayer to the point where some of them were saying that a bad thought crossed my mind, which is, I need to come out of this prayer. And because the Prophet's level of Quran is way beyond. But those who want to take the khatam of the Quran that the Prophet gave many of his companions, it's related from some of the Sahaba. The general standard that the Prophet set for his companions in terms of reading Quran is to finish it weekly, the whole of the Quran weekly, once a week, khatam al Quran. A Sahabi, Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, came to the Prophet and said, I want to finish the whole of the Quran. The Prophet said, read it every month. He said, I can do more than that. He said, then read it every 15 days. I can do more than that. Read it every 10 days. I can do more than that. The Prophet said, then read it every week and don't do more than that. Read it every week and don't do more than that. It's a standard that the Prophet placed for many of the companions. A Sahabi by the name of Sayyidina Aus ibn Hudayfa, al-Thaqafi, from Thaqif, which is from Ta'if. And they're amongst the last of the Arabs to accept Islam. One of the last, after the Battle of Hunayn, which is after the conquest of Mecca, Prophet goes to Hunayn, then he also he does a hisar, he besieges Ta'if, and they don't submit and surrender. But then eventually, before the Prophet passes away, the town of Ta'if, which is the second of the two great cities of Arabia at that time. Medina becomes prominent with the Prophet, but the two Al-Qaryatain Azim, the two main cities of the Arabian Peninsula before the Prophet wasn't Mecca, Medina, it was Mecca and Ta'if. Mecca and Ta'if were the two main cities in Arabia, and Ta'if is the last of the cities that becomes Muslim. When they become Muslim, delegations, wufud, they come to learn from the Prophet. Sayyidina Aus ibn Hudayfa is one of the wufud. He says, I came as part of a delegation to the Prophet, and the Prophet gave them a time to come out and teach them their religion, which was after Isha. Which, bear in mind, the sunnah of the Prophet was after Isha, he reads Quran and goes to sleep. After Isha, the sunnah of the Prophet is he reads Quran, he goes to sleep. The Prophet, as a norm, he does not stay awake after Isha. He does not stay, which is why when you see, when does he pray tahajjud? He wakes up midnight, around the middle of the night. He wakes up around the middle of the night because he's gone to sleep around Isha time. But on this occasion, he's given time to the delegation from Thaqif. He's given them time to teach them. But on one night after Isha, the Prophet comes out of his home slightly late. He has an appointed time with an appointment with them to teach them. And the Sahabi said every night after Isha he would come out to speak to us, but one night he came out late. And so when he came out later than normal, they asked him why he'd come out late. The Prophet he said, I had my hizb of Quran and I did not want to come out until I finished it. Every night after Isha, the Prophet has an amount of Quran that he would read, and he said, I did not want to come out until I'd finished it. So Sayyidina Aus ibn Hudayfa al-Thaqafi radiallahu anhu, he says, I asked the Sahaba, how did the Prophet, about how he divided up his reading of the Quran? Or more correct, كيف تحزبون القرآن? How would you divide up your reading of the Quran? كيف تحزبون القرآن? And then I'm going to mention how they divide up the Quran. Now again, in this narration, it doesn't explicitly state that the Prophet gave them that division of the Quran. But knowing the companions, it's unlikely they would have done it without advice from the Prophet. So although this hadith doesn't tell us that this came from the Prophet, because the word in kayfa tuhazzibun al-Quran, how do you, the companions, how do you split up your reading of the Quran? It doesn't explicitly say that the Prophet gave them that, but the likelihood is that it did come from the Prophet. So they, the Sahaba, said their reading of the Quran was 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, and the Mufassal. 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, and the Mufassal. What the numbers there? Number of surahs that are being read every day. And day number 1, 3 surahs. Day number 2, 5 surahs. Day number 3, 7 surahs. Day number 4, 9 surahs. Day number 5, 11 surahs. Day number 6, 13 surahs. And then the final day, day number 7, al-mufassal. And we'll mention what al-mufassal means shortly. That's an authentic hadith recorded by Abu Dawud and in the Musnad Imam Ahmad. Based upon that, for those who want to do the khatam that many of the Sahaba did, you would recite the Quran as follows. On day number 1, you would read Surah Al-Baqarah to Surah Al-Nisa. And the reason why I also mention this is it's Ramadan, Shahr al-Quran. People should be they should have standards of Quran. Right? The standard of the Sahaba is weekly. Bearing in mind that this was not their Ramadan, this was their normal week. This wasn't Ramadan, this was their normal week. But that's something to aim towards. And for those who have the himmah, for those who have the aspiration, who want to taste Shahr Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran, that this is the month in which the Quran is read, and they should aim for this. Which would mean, if you're going to be truthful to this, that you finish the Quran 4 times in Ramadan. 4 times in Ramadan. But Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi, 60 times in Ramadan. 60 times. That's Subhanallah, not 4 times. Subhanallah is Abu Hanifa and Imam Shafi. Both of them, it's recorded, they would do 2 khatams of Quran a day in Ramadan. Twice a day in Ramadan. Their normal day was 1 khatam of Quran. In Ramadan, twice a day. So this is still a relatively low standard, but we're low, so we need to aim we need to aim high. So for those who want to go for this standard, day number 1, Al-Baqarah and Surah Al-Nisa. Baqarah, Ali Imran, Surah Al-Nisa. So Surah Baqarah to Surah Al-Nisa. That's the first, not including Fatiha, the first 3 surahs after Fatiha, and that's approximately 5 1/4 juz of the Quran. That's approximately 5 1/4 juz of the Quran. Day number 2, which is tomorrow. Day number 2, Surah Al-Ma'idah to Surah Al-Tawbah. Surah Al-Ma'idah to Surah Al-Tawbah. So Surah Al-Ma'idah, and that's from juz number 6 up to Surah Al-Tawbah, you move into juz number 11. So again, you're looking at roughly 5 juz of the Quran. Day number 3, 7 surahs. Surah Yunus. Surah Yunus is Surah Al-Nahl. Surah Yunus to Surah Al-Nahl, that's 7 surahs. And Surah Yunus is at the beginning of Juz 11. Surah Al-Nahl, you'll end Juz 14. So the beginning of Juz 11 to the end of Juz 14. So that's slightly less, that's about 4 and a bit Juz of the Quran. And then day number 4, you read 9 surahs. Surah Al-Isra to Surah Al-Furqan. Surah Al-Isra, Bani Israel, Subhanalladhi Asra bi'abdihi. That's at the beginning of Juz 15, and you go to Surah Al-Furqan, which is at the end of Juz 19. Juz 19, end of Juz 19. Anyway, no, after the beginning of Juz, end of Juz 18, beginning of Juz 19. So it's the beginning of Juz 19. So that's over 4 Juz of the Quran. And then day 5, you read Surah Al-Shu'ara to Surah Yasin. That's 11 surahs. Surah Al-Shu'ara, which is Juz 19, to Surah Yasin, which is the beginning of Juz 23. Day 6, 13 surahs. 13 surahs. Surah Safat, after Yasin, Surah Safat, Juz 23, to Surah Al-Hujurat. Surah Al-Hujurat, which is middle of Juz 26. Juz 23 to Juz 26. Now, one thing to note, and then you go on to day 7. When you're reading the Quran and you're doing your khatams in the Quran, and it's one of the great wisdoms and the great mercy of Allah, how He places surahs in the Quran. At the beginning, it's a bit of a struggle because 2.5 juz and you've only finished 1 surah, and then another juz and a bit, and then you finish the 2nd surah. So the first few days, it's a bit of a push and a struggle. But when you start getting towards like day 5 and day 6, it's accelerating because you're now moving into shorter and shorter and shorter surahs. So it becomes so much more easier. As you're moving towards the end, you actually start picking up and you find it so much more easier because the surahs are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And then you move into day 7, where you read from Surah Qaf, not Surah Al-Kahf, Surah Qaf to the end of the Quran. In the last day, you have 66 surahs, but they're all small. So it becomes so much more easier. 66 surahs on the last day that you'll be reading, but they're all short, small surahs of the Quran. And with that, you maintain that, then you're reading as the Sahaba reading the Quran. So make that a target inside the month of Ramadan. Attach yourself to the Quran by reciting the Quran, which is the beginning before you can even start to move towards understanding meanings of the Quran. Then moving on to tafsir al-Quran, because once you've now got habitual, you've got into a constant habit of reading the Quran. And one of the worst days that you can have, as we heard from our teachers, two things. Number one, they say a day where you do not recite a day of the Quran, a verse of the Quran, is a wretched day. And a day in which you don't send prayers on the Prophet is a wretched day. A wretched day for a person where you don't recite a verse of the Quran, you don't send prayers on the Prophet. Our mother Sayyidah Aisha, she mentioned one of the haqq al-Quran, one of the rights of the Quran upon us is that we open the Mus'haf and read it every day. That we open the Mus'haf, that we open the Quran and we read it every single day. That's a right of the Quran upon us. A right of the Quran upon us that we read the Quran, we look at it and we read it every single day. That standard, just before moving on to that standard is the standard and goal that everybody should move towards in terms of reading the Quran. But for those who are going to struggle with that, even in the month of Ramadan, the riwayah that comes from Abu Hanifa, the narration that comes from Abu Hanifa, says that the minimum a person should read of Quran is 2 khatams a year. 2 khatams a year. Once every 6 months. 2 khatams a year. That's the minimum. And the minimum meaning that going beyond that, a person will fall under the condemnation that comes in the Quran. وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّ إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, my Lord, my people took the Quran and abandoned it. Mahjur, matruk. How do you avoid falling? Because that's now condemnation that comes from Nabi al-Rahmah, the prophets of mercy. And my people took the Quran and they put it on the shelves and they decorated their house with the Quran, but they never opened the Quran. How do you avoid falling into that? Abu Hanifa said, by at least doing 2 khatams a year. At least finishing the Quran twice. And some of them said, his istidlal or his istinbat, where he got that from. Where did he get that from? That every Ramadan, i'tikaf is about Quran and finding Laylatul Qadr. It's about reading Quran. Every i'tikaf of the Prophet ﷺ, he would read the whole of the Quran that he received that point of Jibreel alayhi salam. Mudarasat al-Quran. He would review whatever he had of the Quran with Jibreel alayhi salam. So when you go into i'tikaf, you do the sunnah of the Prophet, read the Quran. But the basis of Abu Hanifa, his view, the last i'tikaf of the Prophet ﷺ, the last year before he passed away, he did i'tikaf for 20 days, not 10 days. He did i'tikaf for 20 days. And in those 20 days, he recited the whole of the Quran twice to Jibreel alayhi salam. He recited the whole of the Quran twice to Jibreel alayhi salam. And on that basis, Abu Hanifa said twice a year is enough for a person to avoid being hajir al-Quran, hijran al-Quran, avoid abandoning the Quran. That's a low standard. That's not a high standard. That's an imam who would do twice a day inside of Ramadan. Well, he's saying it's acceptable. You would not have been considered to abandon the Quran if you do it twice a year. Wallahu a'lam. Once you have that relationship with the Quran, then Allah will open up meanings of the Quran to the heart of that person. If you're constantly reading the Quran, and here people shouldn't be scared that I don't understand the Arabic, I struggle to read and so on. That's besides the point. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the meanings whether you understand it or not. It's not, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placing meanings in your heart is not conditional upon you being able to understand Arabic. That's not conditional upon that. You recite the Quran. Just keep on reading the verse. You have a particular attachment, love for one ayah of the Quran. Keep on reading that. Repeat it. Takrar. Repeat that ayah. It's one of the adab of the Prophet with the Quran. One of the etiquettes of the Prophet with the Quran. You come across a verse, you repeat it. Repeat it. Keep on reading it. And Allah will give openings by that repetition, whether you understand it or not. If you have a real love, Allah has drawn your heart to a particular verse in the Quran, just repeat it. Repeat the ayah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you. Because the understandings that come of means of Quran is not based upon your mind, it's based upon something that Allah places into your heart. It's an affair of the heart. It's not an affair of the mind. It's an affair of the heart that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts something to your heart. Yet at the same time, He wants you to reflect over the Quran. He wants you to reflect over the Quran. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Do they not reflect over the Quran? أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. The verse that challenges the believers to think as they're reading. Think as you're reading the Quran. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Do they not reflect over the Quran? This verse comes twice in the Quran. In one place, it says, وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. Had this been from anybody other than God, you would have found so much contradiction with it. Had it been from other than Allah's Spirit, you would have found so much contradiction with it. The other, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. Are there aqfal, qufl? Are there locks and chains on their hearts? Right? And there you have a concern. You're reading and reading, and nothing's happening to your heart. You're reading and reading and reading, and nothing's stirring in your heart. Why? Aqfal. There's locks on the heart. What does that now need you to do? Start thinking. And thinking, like Imam Ghazali says, at the least thinking just means think whose words it is. Now, these are words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Think who you're talking to. Think who's talking to you. Who's talking to you. Think about the greatness of what's taking place in this moment. Moments where you're having a conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not think, I think this is what this word means. No. Most of us, we're not competent enough to think about what the words mean. Think about who you're talking to. Think about whose words these are. Think about the greatness of these words. Think about the greatness of who it came from, who it came through, who it came to, the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the greatness of His words, the greatness of the angel that carried it, the greatness of the one who it was carried to. Everything about it's great. And then you're in there reading greatness. Think about that, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open up greatness into your heart. Greatness. The Quran is all azim. Everything about the azim, everything about the Quran is azim. It came from Al-Azim subhanahu wa ta'ala, the great one subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the words, great words from the great one subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the great angel to the great messenger. And there you're reading those words. Now you've been allowed to participate in an event of greatness, everything about it azim. So have that reflection, and Allah will open. He'll give you openings with the Quran. And that's the extent. Reflect and think about the greatness of the Quran, and then leave it to the great people who spoke about the Quran, and have your connection with the Quran through that. And as we now move into saying something about the surah that we're going to look at, the surahs that we're going to look at within these 20 days, bear in mind that it's not our job to interpret the Quran. It's not our job, it's not our duty, and we're not allowed to interpret the Quran. It's not our job, it's not our duty, and we're not allowed to interpret the Quran. But we reflect over the greatness of the Quran. And then let Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do the work. And He revealed these meanings to the Prophet. That was then taken by the great companions like Ibn Abbas. We then passed it, and then great people of this ummah spoke about it. We're receiving that. That's what we want to do. We just want to expose ourselves to what's being spoken about the greatness of the Quran. That's what we want to have, so that when we recite the Quran, we can sense and feel something of the greatness of the Quran. But it's not our duty, it's not our job, it's not for us to start commenting and say, I think this is what the Quran is saying. You do that, you're exposing yourself to danger with the Quran. Right? So when it comes to Quran, silence. Let's say what Ibn Abbas said. Let's say what the Prophet said. That's why we're going to study these surahs from Sahih al-Bukhari, the most authentic transmissions about Surah Al-An'am and Surah Al-A'raf that come from the Prophet, that come from the companions and from the Imams who came after. So let's hear what they have to say about it, so that when we read Surah Al-An'am, we have an insight into the meanings of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about. We have an insight when we read Surah Al-A'raf, we have an insight into the meanings of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about. So let's have a relationship with these great chapters of the Quran through the Prophet, through the Sahaba, through these great Imams that Allah gave openings to, that they were able to comment upon the Quran. And let's leave our minds aside. Let's stop. When you reach the ranks of those Imams, and I guarantee you're not going to. But if you theoretically ever got to that level, then say what you like about the Quran. But remember this, and this more than anything else will silence us. This more than anything else will silence us. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the greatest student of the Prophet, the greatest student of the Prophet, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he stood on the minbar, and a man walks in, and he says, وَفَاكِهَةً وَأَبَّا, وَفَاكِهَةً وَأَبَّا, and fruit and fodder. Allah is speaking about al-imtinan, he's speaking about the great favors and blessings in fruit and in fodder. He says, I understand al-fakih, what's al-ab? I understand the great favor in fruits. What's fodder? Right? What does this mean? Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, radiallahu anhu ardah, the student of the Prophet, the greatest student of the Messenger, he goes silent. He won't say anything. Then he raises his head and he said, أي سماء تقلني نعم أي سماء تظلني وأي أرض تقلني إذا قلت في كتاب الله ما لا أعلم. He said, which sky will give me shade and which earth will carry me if I speak about the book of Allah, that which I have no knowledge of. And he refused to speak about one word of the Quran because he had not heard it from the Prophet. But when you look at the Prophet and Abu Bakr, like where's Abu Bakr getting this approach with the Quran? He took the Quran from the one, مَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ, the one who never said a word about the Quran from himself. Everything that the Prophet spoke about the Quran was revealed to him. So even when you look at the Prophet, he's not speaking from himself. When he explains an ayah of the Quran, he's not speaking from himself. He's speaking not just transmission of the verses of the Quran, even the ma'ani of the Quran. When the Prophet is giving us a tafsir of an ayah of the Quran, the Prophet has not deduced this himself. He's received that as part of revelation. ثُمَّ إِنَّ عَلَيْنَا بَيَانًا. The Prophet, when he's told that you don't need to fear about memorizing the Quran, we're going to recite it to you and you'll memorize it. And then we will explain it to you. The whole of the Quran was explained to the Prophet. Every word that the Prophet explained came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Abu Bakr realized that I don't understand this because I never heard from the Messenger, he doesn't say a word about it. That should silence us all. If Abu Bakr cannot speak about an ayah of the Quran, one word of the Quran, we can say nothing about the Quran. We can say nothing about the Quran. Leave your own opinions. Leave your own thoughts about the Quran to yourself. Keep them to yourself. Let's expose ourselves to the understanding of the Prophets and the companions and the great Imams and see how they understood the Quran. In these 20 days, we're going to look at Sahih al-Bukhari, Kitab al-Tafsir, the book of exegesis, explanation of the Quran, two surahs from the Quran, Surah Al-An'am and Surah Al-A'raf. Because in the previous years, I think last 2 or 3 years, we've covered Surah Al-Baqarah, Ali Imran, and Nisa al-Ma'idah. So it's the last 2 years. Because last year we did Ali Imran, we did Al-Ma'idah and Nisa al-Ma'idah. The year before, we did Al-Baqarah and Ali Imran. So we're just going to continue working through Sahih al-Bukhari, the sections on Surah Al-An'am, which is Surah number 6 in the Quran, and Surah Al-A'raf, which is Surah number 7 in the Quran. So tomorrow we're going to start looking at the hadith that the author mentioned in there. Tomorrow we'll look at that. Today we'll just do a quick introduction to Surah Al-An'am. A quick introduction into Surah Al-An'am. When you study any part of the Quran, whether it be an ayah or a whole surah as we're going to do, one of the things that we were taught, whenever you look at an ayah or a surah of the Quran, or even a word in the Quran, never take it out of its location or place in the Quran. Never take it out. Do not look at it and try and understand it in isolation. Why? They said because the Quran is Nazmun Wahid. It's one whole narration from beginning to end. It's one whole narration that's broken down into 114 chapters, broken down further into 6,236 verses. But it's one whole narration. You can't just pluck out a surah and say, this is... If you take it out of its location within the Quran, you've lost something essential about the meanings and understandings of the Quran. This is a simple example. You want to study the greatest verse in the Quran, Ayat al-Kursi. As you start studying, Ayat al-Kursi is broken down into 10 sentences. So before you can even break down the sentence in Ayat al-Kursi, you must look at, number one, which surah is it in? The surah it's in is significant. And even before the surah, which part or which portion of the Quran it's in, because we're going to look at that with Surah Al-An'am. The Prophet ﷺ divided the Quran into 4 parts. 4 parts. So which of the 4 parts did the Prophet ﷺ divide the Quran into? Which of the 4 parts is it from? And then which surah is it from? And then within that surah, what part of that surah? Because surahs, they have flows, they ebb and flow. You'll see different styles and subjects and matters that are being spoken of in surah. So then you now need to look at which part of that surah it's in. And then what's the verses that came before, what's the verses that came after. After you studied all of that, now you can start looking at Ayatul Kursi. Now you can start looking at that individual ayah in order to start grasping or gaining understanding. So the same we do with Surah Al-An'am. So the first question that comes with Surah Al-An'am, where is it in the Quran? Based on the division of the Prophet. Now, what's worth noting when you study the Quran, we have 30 juz of the Quran. The system of al-ajza, or 30 sparas of the Quran, 30 juz of the Quran, that did not come from the Prophet. What came from the Prophet? Ayat of the Quran, Surah al-Quran, the verses, the breakdown of verses, and the breakdown of surahs of the Quran. That's part of revelation. Asam is surah, the names of surahs of the Quran, that's part of revelation. But the ajza, or the sparas of the Quran, that's not part of revelation. That breakdown, that's something that was introduced to aid and help people to finish the Quran every 30 days, a month. That's the system, but that's not part of revelation. But what we do have is a breakdown from the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ broke down the Quran into 4 parts. And those 4 parts are important in terms of locating surahs in the Quran. The Prophet ﷺ gave four names to the parts of the Quran. Number 1, he referred to as-Sab' al-Tiwan. As-Sab' al-Tiwan, the 7 long surahs of the Quran. Then he referred to al-Mi'un, the 100 verse surahs of the Quran. Then al-Mathani. And al-Mathani, there's a debate about what al-Mathani means. Al-Mathani, according to some of the ulama of the Quran, says a surah al-Mutakarram, the repeated surahs of the Quran. And then al-Mufassal. And there's a bigger debate about what al-Mufassal means. Al-Mufassal, kathrat al-fusul, that part of the Quran where you have a lot of breaks in, a lot of surahs within. Wallahu a'lam. That's the division that the Prophet gave us. 4-part division of the Quran. But he gave us further detail. The Sab' al-Tiwal, the 7 long surahs of the Quran, which is from Surah Al-Baqarah to Surah Al-Tawbah. Surah Al-Baqarah to Surah Al-Tawbah, the 7 long surahs. He said, I was given this in place of the Torah. I was given this in place of the Torah. Very important point that's been given about understanding the Quran. If you want to understand the revelation that was revealed to Bani Israel through Musa and the Torah, you don't have the original Old Testament. You have it within Baqarah, Ali Imran, Nisa, Ma'id. You want to understand the essential messages of Torah? Read Surah Baqarah to see the Surah Tawbah. The Prophet said, I was given these surahs in place of the Torah. In place of the Torah. And our teachers mentioned it doesn't mean word for word you're going to find Old Testament within there, but the key essential meanings you'll find. Although you even have indicate وَكَتَبْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ فِيهَا أَنَّ النَّفْسَ بِالنَّفْسِ. Allah relates that in the Torah it says this. He actually quotes directly out of the Torah within one of the surahs within there. So you want to get an idea of what was revealed to Musa, read Baqarah to Surah Tawbah. Then the Prophet said, Al-Mi'un, Jam'u Mi'ah, Al-Mi'un. Mi'un is a plural of 100, the 100 verse surahs, which is those surahs slightly longer than 100 verses. Al-Mi'un. And that's from Surah Yunus to Surah Al-Furqan. Surah Yunus to Surah Al-Furqan. The Alif Lam Ra surahs. Alif Lam Ra surahs, and going beyond that. Now the key thing that was said, I was given this in place of the Zabur. I was given this in place of the Zabur. The Psalms that were revealed to Dawood alayhi salam. I was given these surahs in place of the Zabur. And then the third passage, the third part, the Prophet called Al-Mathani, those repeated surahs. That's from Surah Al-Shu'ara to Surah Al-Hujurat. Surah Al-Shu'ara to Surah Al-Hujurat. And the key statement, I was given these in place of the Injil. I was given this in place of the Injil. Like when you read Surah Yasin, when you read surahs of that nature, that's the type of revelation that came to Isa alayhi salam. That's the type of messages that were being revealed to Prophet Isa alayhi salam. وَفُضِّلْتُ بِالْمُفَصَّلِ. But I alone was given the Mufassal. I alone was given the Mufassal. So the last part of the Quran, Surah Qaf to the end of the Quran, those type of meanings were never revealed in revelations that came before. Surah Al-An'am and Surah Al-A'raf are part of the 7 long surahs of the Quran. That's the beginning part of the Quran. So what we're going to study, Surah Al-An'am and Surah Al-A'raf, are part of the 7 long surahs of the Quran that the Prophet ﷺ said, I was given in place of the Torah. So these type of meanings you're going to find inside of the Torah, inside of Surah Al-A'raf or Surah Al-An'am and Surah Al-A'raf. However, when you look at those 7 surahs, like what we studied over the last 2 years, Al-Baqarah, Al-Imran, and Nisa, Al-Ma'idah, and then the 2 after this, which is Al-Anfal and Al-Tawbah. And an interesting point, even though the Prophet called them 7 long surahs, it's actually 8 surahs. Because Al-Anfal and Tawbah are treated as one surah. Al-Anfal and Tawbah, the 2 surahs that are not separated by Bismillah. They're treated as one surah. But when you look at all of these surahs, they're all revealed in Medina. They're all revealed in Medina. So Surah Al-Baqarah, Ali Imran, and Nisa, Al-Ma'idah, all revealed in Medina. And every part of them revealed in Medina. And then, inshallah, إِذَا أَحْيَانَ اللَّهُ ta'ala, next year when we study Surah Al-Anfal and Surah Al-Tawbah, Madani. The surah is revealed in Medina. However, out of those 7 long surahs, these 2 surahs were revealed in Mecca. The difference in nature. Surah Al-An'am revealed in Mecca. Surah Al-A'raf revealed in Mecca. So when you look at these 7 long surahs, Al-An'am and Al-A'raf that we're going to study and look at, the difference of Baqarah, Ali Imran, Nisa, and Ma'idah, the difference of Al-Anfal and Al-Tawbah, all of those Medina, ayat, surahs in Medina, ahkam and aqidah. Ahkam, they're all about legal rules. And in addition, aqidah, particularly debating Jews and Christians. That's what you're going to find in those surahs. Whereas Al-An'am and Al-A'raf, you have none of them. There's no hukum, there's no legal ruling that you'll find inside Surah Al-An'am. There is no legal ruling that you'll find inside Surah Al-A'raf. No legal ruling. What's it all about? It's all about Tawheed, it's all about Iman. It's all about Iman. The whole of Surah Al-An'am and Surah Al-A'raf is an exposure about faith. You're being taught the meanings of Tawheed. And perhaps that's even clearer within Surah Al-An'am, because Surah Al-An'am focuses on the 3 essential aspects of faith. The 3 essential aspects of faith, ilahiyat. It focuses heavily on proofs of divinity. And debate with the Meccans, the people of Mecca. It focuses heavily on a nubuwwah, prophecy. And an interesting point, and this is something that only became clear to myself. Once I had a debate or discussion, whatever you want to call it, with a Christian priest about prophecy in light of Quran and in light of the Bible. And when I was doing research on it, all the key points that we believe about prophecy, the verses were coming out of Surah Al-An'am. The key verses, when you study Aqeedah about prophecy, the key verses that we believe about prophets, you'll find them in Surah Al-An'am. You'll find key aspects of prophecy and belief in the Day of Judgment, Surah Al-An'am. Surah Al-An'am focused upon them. Surah Al-A'raf is slightly different, and Surah Al-A'raf is fascinating, the approach that Allah brings in Surah Al-A'raf, but very different. Surah Al-An'am is just pure Aqeedah, divinity, prophecy, Day of Judgment. And that's why you can refer to it as Surah Al-Tawheed. One of the great aspects of Surah Al-An'am, one of the greatness of Surah Al-An'am, the longest passage of the Quran revealed in one. The longest passage of the Quran, 165 verses revealed in one go. 70,000 angels accompanying Jibreel alayhi salam because of the greatness of what's been revealed. The longest passage of the Quran revealed in one, the whole of Surah Al-An'am. And Abdullah ibn Abbas told us not only is it revealed in one, he said it was revealed at night to the Prophet. One night, the whole of Surah Al-An'am was revealed to the Prophet. So there you have one of the key aspects, Surah Al-An'am, that makes it distinct, that this chapter of Tawheed, all about faith, one instance, the whole lot of it. The normal revelation of Quran, 5 ayahs at a time. 5 ayahs. Here, 165 verses come to the Prophet with one go. And when you study the process of revelation, even 3 words, the shortest revelation that came to the Prophet, 3 words. غَيْرَ أُولِي الضَّرَرِ. The shortest revelation that came to the Prophet in one instant, 3 words of the Quran from Surah An-Nisa, غَيْرَ أُولِي الضَّرَرِ. The companion Zayd ibn Thabit said, I was writing the words down of the Quran, and the Prophet had his leg over my leg. Said, and Jibreel came back and gave the Prophet those 3 words. He said, the weight of those 3 words, he said, almost caused me to, he said, almost like my leg almost snapped because the weight of the revelation of 3 words. That's 3 words. One instant, 3 words, so heavy upon the Prophet that the weight of it was unbearable to Zayd ibn Thabit. Yet, 165 verses comes down in one instant. And that tells you the famous verse that we read, لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. A mountain can't bear the weight of the Quran. If we had revealed this Quran to a mountain, you would have seen it collapsed and demolished, like, down to dust and soil, out of khashyatillah, out of the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A mountain could not take the weight of 1 word in the Quran. Yet the Prophet, not just 3 words, 165 verses. 165, the weight of it, the Prophet he takes on one night the whole of Surah Al-An'am. So inshallah tomorrow we'll begin looking at, there's one last point in the introduction which is important when studying. Why is it called Al-An'am? And we look at that. Because the name of Surah, they said in 1 word, Allah summarized the whole of that Surah. In 1 word, you have a summary of the key aspect of what that Surah. It's almost like it's a task that's impossible for us. Like you see summarization in the Quran. The whole of the Quran is summarized in 7 verses. 6,236, 7 verses. Al-Fatiha is the whole of the Quran in 7 verses. And every single surah, if you are asked just in 1 word, tell me what exactly is that chapter about, it's been done for you. Surah Al-Baqarah, Al-Baqarah. It's about the cow. Read the part about the cow there and understand what's the significance of the cow, and then you've understood the key theme of Al-Baqarah. Read Ali Imran. Read Ali Imran. Read the passage in Surah Ali Imran about the family of Imran, then you've understood the surah. So when we look at Surah Al-An'am, we need to find the references in the surah to An'am, livestock. What is it about livestock that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, speaking about that, He's taking that as the heading of that surah that summarizes it in 1. So we'll look at that tomorrow, and then we'll begin looking at Sahih al-Bukhari, the passage in Sahih al-Bukhari. What we're going to do, because there's Baqarah, Ali Imran, there's a significant number of verses that are spoken about in Sahih al-Bukhari, whereas from here onwards, there's only 1 or 2 ahadith. So the way we're going to look at it, we'll do overviews of passages within the surah, and then when we come to a particular hadith that speaks about, we'll focus on that particular hadith. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Are there any questions that anybody has on what we've spoken of today? Sorry, yeah?
Yeah. Obviously, you spoke about people reading Quran in Arabic. If you don't read Arabic,
So what you should do in that case, do a khatam with the translation of the Quran. Do a khatam, so just get a good, reliable translation of the Quran, and that especially works based on the view of Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa holds the view that because the Quran is made up of 2 components, the Quran is words and meanings. So he said the meanings carry something of the Quran within it. So even though you're not reading the words of the Quran, you're still reading the meanings of the Quran. Which is why, for example, Abu Hanifa holds the view with the translation of the Quran, you still have to have wudu, because one of the 2 core key aspects of the Quran is still there, which is the meanings. So based on his view, you should read it, but at the same time, start now working towards a goal that next year or the year after, that you're able to start reading the Quran. So take this almost like as a stopgap measure for you for now. Next year or the year after, you should make an attempt to start reading the Quran in Arabic. Because even though there are meanings captured in the translation, there are secrets in the words of the Quran itself in the Arabic that nothing can replace. There are secrets in the words that nothing can replace. Allahu Akbar. And in truth, that's not just for those who can't read, those who don't understand the Arabic directly. They should be reading a translation parallel with the Arabic reading of the Quran. Perhaps less so in Ramadan. In Ramadan, it's more about doing khatams of the Quran. It's more important in Ramadan that you read a significant portion of the Quran. But especially outside Ramadan, you should have a reading of the Quran, and parallel with that, you should have a reading of contemplation of the Quran. Both of them have to be there, whether you understand the Quran or not. Even Arabs now don't understand the Quran. Most Arabs now open the Quran, they haven't got a clue. It's like it's a different language. And like modern day tafsir of the Quran is just put into modern standard Arabic now. So everybody has to have a dual reading of the Quran. Reading the Quran for the sake of reading it, and reading the Quran for the sake of understanding it. Wallahu a'lam. Anything else? Yeah.
What was the reference for the shortest revelation? You said 3 words or something.
It's Surah An-Nisa, and the verse number. Verse number 95. It's at the beginning of verse number 95. Allah.
So one of the narrations they have of the Sahabi or the Imams that are completing it in one sitting.
Mm-hmm.
So were they reading it like we were reading it?
Speed read.
How would it take? Do we know? Because it must take 7, 8, 9 hours.
Time moves differently for different people. So, knowing those type of people, they wouldn't have been speed reading as we read. Although bearing in mind, in Tajweed, they have 3 standards of reading Quran, or 3, you can almost call 3 speeds of reading Quran. You have what's called Al-Hadar, Al-Tadweer, and the third one. Al-Hadar, Al-Tadweer, and forgotten the third one. There's a quick reading, an average reading, and a slow reading. The quick reading is still reading it correctly. Like it's not dropping letters and messing up. It's still reading it with Tajweed, but it's just at a faster pace. And so for those who are reading large amounts, that's how they read it. They read it at a quick pace, but still everything is clear within what they're reading. So when you read like Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, they're not going to be reading like that. They'll be reading quicker than that, but everything's still complete. But the Prophet's standard was different. Every time he read the Quran, every letter was distinct and clear. That's what Sayyidah Salama, when she was asked about the reading the Prophet's Quran, she said every letter was distinct and clear when he would read it. Allahu Akbar. Any other question? أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم. إلى حضرة النبي الفاتحة. صلى الله عليه وسلم. الحمد لله.